Right, questions to the Cabinet members will now be taken until the 45-minute continuous period for questions and answers has ended. Question number 12, Councillor Boswell.
Question number 12 to the Cabinet member, please.
Thank you. I thank Councillor Boswell for the question. And the answer is more or less as laid out. Councillor Boswell will have to wait till the next cycle before we have more details. But I might surprise everyone and be one of the first mutuals.
Councillor Thomas.
Earlier, Councillor Govindia referred to what he called the menu of choice the Council is offering to families to reflect their lifestyle and their pocket, but unfortunately declined to say what the new charges for stay and play are going to be. Is the Cabinet member saying that she's got no notion of what level these charges might be pitched at? And can she tell me what provision is going to be put in place for those who can't afford to stay and pay?
I thank the Councillor for his question, because actually it's very intuitive. When I saw Councillor Osborne's original question and he had used the word resort, I immediately emailed the leader and said, this shows such disrespect for our 300 or so childminders, as though they are the bottom of the pile, and they're not. In direct response to your question, there will be 17 three venues where stay and play will be available. We're talking about perhaps 4 or 5 in the most affluent wards of the borough where there will be a minimum charge. But again, you'll have to wait until the paper comes during the next cycle.
Second supplementary, Mr.
Councillor Nadler.
Would the Cabinet member agree with me that we should really be commending and assisting all the staff and officers that are currently working very hard on finding innovative and enterprising ways to continue to provide a seamless stay and play offer across the borough, and that actually some of the ideas that we've heard discussed and suggested by Councillor Osborne may yet find their obvious solution in the ideas that we come forward with?
Absolutely. I thank the Councillor for the question. And in fact, the 1 o'clock clubs have remained the same for probably 25 years now, and perhaps it is one of those areas. Councillor Osborne is right. In some areas, we haven't perhaps kept up with the times, and having released the staff to come up with suggestions how to use these buildings better and how to deliver the service that we believe our residents want has been very helpful, and I commend the staff. I think they've done a terrific job, as have the voluntary organisations that at the moment are using the premises.
Councillor Locker.
Question number 13 to the Cabinet member.
Yes, I thank my colleague for this excellent question. The Council is very much investing in our roads and pavements. Extra money to take into account the difficult weather conditions that we've had in recent years. Work has already started around the borough, and intensive improvements going ward by ward, 6 repair crews. I'm sure my colleagues will be delighted that in Southfield wards we've already begun on road defects, and in Bedford we've also gone on footway defects.
Councillor Locker.
Thank you. Can the Cabinet member give us any information on how we will be letting local residents know about the works that are due to take place, and how we will communicate with them on our progress?
Yeah, there's a range of communication channels which we will be using to inform residents. We've already started that communication in terms of press releases. There's going to be articles in Brightside. We're also delivering a leaflet to all of the households so they're aware that the crews are going to be coming around and they can make arrangements in order for things like moving their cars as required, and they also know they can understand what is going on, and if they have issues, where they can contact us.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Second supplementary. Could the Cabinet member indicate to me when he expects this programme to reach Roehampton, and specifically Kingsclear Close, which currently represents something of a roller coaster ride if you try to go down it in a car?
Councillor Carpenter, just to clarify on the conditions first of all, all urgent potholes would get repaired as soon as they were reported, normally within 2 or 3 days and often quicker. So if you've reported them, they would be fixed. If you haven't reported them, then you're doing a disservice to your residents. With regards in terms of the specific timetables, we have an outline plan. Obviously it will vary depending, the length of the time it will take to do a ward will vary for various reasons. We have an outline plan and I'll be happy to write to him on our ballpark estimate of when we'll get to Roehampton.
Councillor Leonie Cooper.
Question number 14 to the Cabinet Member for Environment, Culture and Community Safety.
Well, I thank the councillor for the question. It really is quite extraordinary. This is the second in a trilogy of questions on community toilets this evening. We've got one for written response, and we then, if we have time, we have a mini debate at the end of the evening. It clearly didn't pass Councillor Carpenter's strategy test or Councillor Daly's priority test, because if they were truly concerned about the welfare of residents, they might, for example, have shown some mild curiosity in the London Fire Safety Plan, which is currently out to consultation. Many of us went to the meeting, none of them were there. Instead, they're obsessed with community toilets. It's a very sensible measure. I am absolutely confident that, I know of course that all of the council facilities will remain open, and of course all of the businesses who are part of the scheme, which remains in place, so the question is wrong on that count, they will of course all still be open, and I'm very confident that, as the leader outlined, they will want to continue to be part of it, much in the mood that Councillor Osborne suggested, that we all work together in this community. I'm sure that's what will happen.
Councillor Leonie Cooper.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'm glad that the Cabinet Member seems to find it amusing, but I wonder if he's familiar with the condition called cor pulmonale. This is pressure on the heart due to amount of water that is retained in people's bodies, and it results from when people refuse to take their water tablets because they're concerned about their inability to find somewhere to go to the lavatory. We closed all of our public lavatories in this borough, and we voted in favour of that cost saving because we felt that that was appropriate, bearing in mind there was this alternative scheme which was actually extremely cost effective and did not take a great deal of money. And I'd just like the Cabinet Member to answer to us to say whether or not he really thinks that it is worth the potential for people to be extremely ill and actually to die from cor pulmonale to actually close down this scheme. It only saves a very small amount of money.
Let's get one thing straight. I don't find this amusing. It's a serious measure like anything brought to this chamber, and I don't think I implied otherwise. So let's be very clear about that. I think it's very peculiar logic to pick out any one condition. There are many groups, all of whom were considered in the impact assessment, which was properly presented to the committee. It's a very strange logic to pick out a particular condition and any particular group of people. It was looked at very, very carefully, and I'm satisfied that we've done a thorough job there. And to refer to a saving of almost £100,000 a year as being small just shows us what a poor grip the party opposite has of how the figures add up. That is a lot of money in my book, and since this scheme has been in place, we've spent the best part of £500,000, and while one can see the logic of how it happened as it did, it made perfect sense, the world has changed, and I think it now represents very poor value for money, and I'm sure as a community we will manage just fine.
Second supplementary, Mr. Bear.
Councillor Mrs Clay.
Thank you. Does the Cabinet Member share my disappointment, really, that Councillor Cooper yet again chooses to criticise our excellent officers for a cursory, in her words, equality impact assessment, and comes up with an off-the-cuff, presumably unscientific description of people with a certain disease with no facts, no figures, no nothing, and uses that to criticise our councillors?
I thank my colleague for the question. Well, yes, I am disappointed. I'm not surprised. I think it's also worth noting that Councillor Cooper wasn't actually at the meeting in question. So how she could judge that it was cursory is really beyond me. But I agree. I think the officers have done a very thorough job. This is a sensible measure, and I think if any resident of Wandsworth who could be picked at random in a street and they were told that we were spending £100,000 a year on this scheme, they would question really whether that represented value for money, because I'm sure that the arrangements we already have those facilities will be there in the future without a problem.
Go on.
Thank you, very grudgingly, Mr Mayor.
It was meant to be.
You're right, I was not actually present at that meeting because unfortunately I was looking after an ill animal, and the reason I described it as cursory and late submitted is I had a meeting with the officers the night before at which the equality impact assessment had not at that point been prepared. So I think to submit something that was prepared during the day to a meeting that evening, I think I'm well within my rights to make that description.
Councillor Mrs Stokes.
Question 15 to the Cabinet Member for Environment, Culture and Community Safety.
I thank the councillor for the question. We do indeed spend a lot of money clearing up litter. We've just started new contracts going very well. We've got state-of-the-art equipment, and you've probably noticed it around the borough, doing a very good job already. It is, the word disappointing is used here as well. It is a little disappointing that we have to spend so much money on it. We take great pride in the appearance of the borough. It's very important. It contributes to how we feel about the place and how people behave in all sorts of ways. So it's very, very important. But it does often strike me that there's something faintly absurd about having to spend best part of £4 million, it's actually 3.8 million, picking up things that other people have dropped on the pavement. And if we encourage a greater proportion not to drop things, which is why we've launched the campaign we have, then we could save some of that money, which would clearly be sensible.
Councillor Mrs Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wonder if the Cabinet Member could share with us how many fixed penalty notices for littering have actually been issued in the last year, during the year 2012-13, and also how many enforcement officers are currently engaged on enforcing and preventing, addressing this issue. So it strikes me, and most of the people who approach me about this matter, that not a great deal is being done.
I thank the councillor for the supplementary question. I don't know the exact number of FPNs. I can easily find out and get back to the councillor on that. It's very important to emphasise that is not the purpose. Issuing FPNs and bringing in revenue is not the purpose of the exercise. It's to stand up for the decent majority who I'm sure find littering extremely objectionable and, as I said, extremely costly thing to deal with. As for enforcement officers, we've got the same number we've ever had, and they are as active as they ever have been. From the comments that I've had, that is very welcome. Lots of people have commented to me on the activity, so I think the councillor is maybe behind the curve on that one.
Councillor Fairbrother.
To the Cabinet Member.
I thank the councillor for this question. I think it actually raises an important issue that comes up from time to time, is that there is a misunderstanding about whether or not we're fully repairing a pothole, or whether it's actually been a temporary fix, which we have to go back to later, and of course that leaves the impression that the quality of the repair has not been very good. Actually, when we look at what the quality of our repairs and we do our quality control, that proves not to be the case in the vast majority of circumstances. The other situation which causes issues is we have thousands of utilities works done across the borough as well. On a yearly basis, and unfortunately around 10% of those are of poor quality reinstatements, and we check all of those, and then they have to go back, the utilities have to go back and redo them as well.
Councillor Fairbrother.
I thank the Cabinet Member for his answer. At the recent report back, residents in Faresdown, I think we're saying in essence we might be good at step one, repairing a temporary repair for a pothole, but we seem to be quite poor at step two, the permanent repair. In answer to question 26, and you've alluded it to in question 13 as well, you've explained that a new initiative, especially in communications with residents, is to be introduced. Could you say something about how we're going to do this? Is it individually or purely on the website?
So in terms of the communication, there is some communication which is more sort of in the air, if you like. It's on the website or on our own Brightside. But there's also each individual household will get a leaflet explaining the information, explaining what we're doing.
Councillor Mrs Torrington.
Mr Mayor. Does the Cabinet Member believe that the use of full directed gangs rather than ad hoc repairs ensure that when one pothole is fixed, those nearby would also be fixed, offering better value for money?
Yes, thank my colleague for the question. We have been looking very carefully at how we can get better value for money in terms of the way our crews go out. And in the recent tendering, we looked at whether or not a gang approach where we're fixing one pothole and there was another pothole down the road, whether or not they'd have the flexibility to be able to go and fix that. And it clearly is obviously an advantage for them to go and do that without having to go through huge amounts of bureaucracy and authorisations on that. And so we've given our gangs much more flexibility, which means they'll be able to improve the service they have to residents. So we should no longer get the issue of, why have you fixed this pothole but not the one next to it, sort of situation.
Councillor Mrs Strickland.
Question.
I thank the councillor for the question. It's a very long answer. We're in the middle of the consultation at the moment, and we've got a special committee which will discuss the results of the consultation on the 4th of June.
So, Mrs Strickland.
Just a short supplementary. I thank the Cabinet Member for her response and ask if, while the local authority has the statutory duty to provide education for the increasing number of children in the borough, together with their parents and carers responding to this consultation, we, as corporate parents, share their concerns and value this evidence of the popularity of our local schools.
Not sure there was a question there. Oh yes, well I would agree. I think this is quite a difficult consultation, and I think that this council will need to remember that if you have a child at school, you might automatically vote against having builders in for the next year, which might, they think, affect their child's education. But we do have a more strategic view for the very many youngsters that are coming through the system, and the increase which goes on to 2020. We do have a strategic responsibility to find places for those children.
Supplementary.
Councillor Gibbons.
As in the past, we have closed many primary schools. But given that we do have a strategic view, and we know that the population is increasing rapidly, does Councillor Tracy ever wish, even secretly, that the council itself could open schools without going through the rigmarole of free schools and finding various different kinds of providers and not necessarily knowing their track record, given that we actually do have a very good track record as a borough in providing primary schools?
Thank Councillor Gibbons for his supplementary, and we'll take the opportunity of welcoming back onto the Education and Children's Services Committee. In answer to his question, I think actually the answer is no. It is possible, as we proved with the Tooting Primary School, that if you can show a real strategic need for a school, working with our partners, you can create a free school. And I know the local council has appreciated that one. It's also not true to say that we don't know the track record of any of the possible free schools we've had in the borough. We have a commission where we do interview the people that want to set up a free school in the borough, the people that think it might be a good idea, and the people that, to be honest, haven't a clue, but we see them in any case out of a sort of politeness, but if they've applied to set up a free school. So by the time the DFE actually ask us for our views, we have a very clear idea on whether or not they're going to be able to deliver the type of school our residents want.
Councillor Bolton.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to thank Councillor Belton for his question, and I hope he's reassured by the length and the detail of the reply that the Council does, of course, take the safety and security of its residents on the estates very seriously indeed. We will obviously do everything within our power to ensure that there is no repetition of that dreadful incident in the Lake and All house in Camberwell. And as Councillor Belton is aware, we have in fact agreed to spend £150,000 on one of our estates to put in dry risers.
Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry the Director's not here to hear this fascinating discussion about fires in council properties. He happens to be in Amsterdam, I happen to know. I hope his evening ends well. Chelsea were leading 1-0, but an update from the front, Benfica have just equalised, so he is due for an exciting last 20 minutes. But I would actually thank him for helping in drafting this answer. I did note, in fact, the dry risers coming in those two particular properties as a result of fire checks, which merely makes the point, I think, that although I asked similar questions, sorry.
I will endeavour to do all those things, Mr.
Supplementary, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor
Councillor Belton's to be congratulated, I think, on raising that issue of fire. But of course, our tenants are not just concerned with safety, they're also concerned with things like the quality of their accommodation, their security, indeed the cleanliness of the estates. And I wonder if the Cabinet member could share with us the results of a recent survey as to what our tenants think of our provision of housing services.
I'd like to thank Councillor Tom for his supplementary. My understanding is that the most recent survey, I think it was 81% of our tenants said they were satisfied with the service they received, which I think is very high indeed. And I'm sure anyone that gets the Wandsworth Guardian and perhaps even reads the Wandsworth Guardian may well actually have seen the very good letter in it the other week from Ross Fraser, the Chief Executive of Housemarque, who happens to be a borough resident, who was very complimentary indeed about our housing department.
Thank you. The time for continuous questions to the Leader and the Cabinet Member have now come to an end.